The answer is yes. It already happened. I mean, I built a company, Weblogs Inc., and our automotive blog, our consumer electronics blog, I mean, they were as big as bigger than many mainstream publications, magazines, bigger than Car and Driver and Motor Trend and these things, and we were much bigger than the New York Times auto section, you know, and the readership of that kind of stuff. So I think it already has, and you'll see basically the best stuff will rise and the bad stuff will not. And then the big companies will buy the little ones. I mean, Weblogs Inc. got bought in 2006 by America Online Time Warner. That was very early. They bought it 18 months after we started it, but they had the vision to see that blogs were the future. I have great faith in I shouldn't maybe, people tell me I'm stupid, but I have great faith in the audience. I think that the audience will search out the best possible thing, they will defend themselves, and they will train themselves. And I think a lot of mainstream media companies are using, you know, protecting the users as an excuse to try to protect their businesses. I think the public now is more, you know, focused on getting to the truth than ever. They look at the New York Times and say, it's more left, I don't trust it on these issues, I trust them on these issues. They look at the Wall Street Journal and go, oh, it's owned by Rupert Murdoch, who is sort of a capitalist, but maybe he's on the right, but he's also supporting Obama. Like, people understand what the political positions and what the nuances are, not only of the publications they're reading, but the specific journalists. And that's awesome. And then they'll be able to make their own decision. And the young people do not trust any one source. As a matter of fact, young people don't trust anything. They look at it and say, oh, it's in the newspaper, it's on TV, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I want to find out for myself. And they'll look across many different articles. And I think that's going to be the future of it, is people coming to their own version of the truth. And maybe they'll say, like, yeah, I believe Barack is going to be the next president, he's going to be great for these reasons, but maybe these are his flaws. And they'll Twitter that, and they'll blog it. And then their friends will say, well, did you read this and this and this? And they'll say, yeah, I read that and I read this, but don't you understand that that publication is owned by Arianna Huffington, who's totally on the left, and, you know, she lives in Los Angeles and she hangs out with these people, and, you know, that journalist who wrote that for Huffington Post is her friend, and she was seen at this dinner party with him, and here's the photo from Getty Images of them together. That's why you can't trust it. Like, people start to, you know, really get nuanced on it. I believe in the user. And I think these tools will ultimately put the power in the hands of the users and hold the people who used to have the power to a higher standard. You know, if somebody in the New York Times makes a mistake today, they're toast. Journalists live in constant fear now that they make a mistake, they're going to be slaughtered by the blogosphere. And that's appropriate. The fact that Jason Blair got away with being a liar for so long, it just shows how broken that system was, that somebody could just lie. And people called the New York Times and said, this guy's a liar, he misquoted me, this is not, he described my house, it's not my house, he was never here. And I know Jason Blair. He called me the first day he started working there, and I just thought, this guy's an idiot, how did he get the job here? Well, Jason Blair was the journalist at the New York Times who made up all of his stories and was a liar, and, you know, basically got fired for, you know, basically making stuff up. And he wrote for the New York Times. And, you know, there's Stephen Glass and many other examples of it, you know, in journalism. So, you know, I'm a journalist, I love journalism, I love this process of storytelling. It serves a very good purpose in society, but it needed to be shaken up. And so you're seeing it right now, and it's painful. But, you know, training for a marathon is painful. Training for the Olympics is painful, you know, and getting in shape is painful, but that's good pain. Journalism is going to be stronger than ever, and, you know, hundreds of people losing their jobs at the LA Times. You know, it's sad to see people lose their jobs and whatever, but it's good to see journalism evolving, and it's good to see it getting better. And those people will find jobs, and there will be work for them, because the role of storytelling and informing the public is always going to be there. It's just going to change, and change is good in some cases, so not for long. I think with the internet, it's going to be very hard to have censorship in the long term. There'll always be, well, hopefully not always, but, you know, there are going to be dictatorships and people who absolutely have an iron, you know, grip on their citizens. But, you know, outside of the Middle East, I think you're going to see it change pretty radically, pretty quick, because the internet is impossible to control. And so you look at countries like China that are trying to control the internet, it's not working. They're basically saying you can't do this, you can't do that, and maybe we'll arrest you for this or that. But people are getting to the information, and they all know how to route around it. So, somebody if the Chinese government shuts down Google or turns off the New York Times for a couple of weeks, people know how to get to it. People republish it to RSS feeds, to other places. They email it. They put it on blogs. I mean, so for any country to survive in this global economy, they need the internet. If you embrace the internet in order to have your economy grow, you cannot stop that open communication unless you want to just arrest everybody. So if your country feels that pornography is, an offense that requires you to be put in jail, guess what? You can't have the internet, or else everybody's going to be in jail pretty quick. And that's another one of those things that people are very confused about. They look at it and say, how is China, doing what they're doing and changing, but they're not changing? Unless it's a country like Cuba or North Korea, Iran, even Iran is having a hard time holding back bloggers. You can't unplug yourself from the internet unless you're North Korea or maybe Cuba. Very few countries can do that. Certainly not the major ones. So I think that the internet will become the driving force of democratization and freedom of speech. And the more people try to hold it back, the more it's just going to rush over them. I mean, China, if you saw with the earthquake and people dying over there, they were protesting the street over it. 10 years ago when people protested in the street in China, they got run over by tanks in Tiananmen Square. So the world is changing very rapidly. In our lifetime, the concept of censorship and dictatorships, I think, will be over in our lifetimes.